Welcome to Big Energy. I'm your host, Kassi Underwood, here to give you a dose of that good energy and talk with people who do it best. Each week, I bring you the knowledge we need to be the forces of nature we came here to be. Hi friends, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how to deal when someone in your life is negative or just in a negative mood or going through a negative phase. Here's how it can look. You say you want to do something, they say that's a bad idea. You mention a person, they say something bad about them. You tell them a goal, they shoot it down. You share something you accomplished, they say, but did you do this other thing? And maybe they're just generally grouchy or cynical or dismissive. We have all been through experiences like this in life where someone that we're around a lot or someone we love, maybe a parent, a friend, a lover, is just going through a Negative Nelly phase or Killjoy Ken phase. And it's a fucking bummer to be around, but there's a way through, and I'm going to share with you the step-by-step process today. So I don't know about you, but I worked really hard to become a positive person. Humans are hardwired to see the negative. It's called negativity bias. This is believed to be an adaptive evolutionary function. For thousands of years, there were a lot more environmental dangers that we needed to attend to. So it was useful back then to be attuned to the negative. And even though we've largely evolved beyond the need for this negativity bias, our brains are still hardwired for these cave people days. So if you're a positive person, chances are you've worked hard to evolve beyond the ways of a cave person. You're probably experiencing more pleasure, joy, satisfaction, fulfillment, and bliss, which is amazing because holding on to the negativity bias, as you probably know, can cause relationship issues in our romantic life, our friendships, our work. The reason for this is because the negativity bias makes it harder for us to accept constructive feedback. So we just end up needing solely praise. We have a hard time taking responsibility for our actions. We have a hard time encouraging others because we're always looking at the negative or what they're doing wrong. And it's harder to build trust because we're assuming that people aren't trustworthy or that it's not going to work if we don't do it and that sort of thing. The negativity bias can also stop us from taking risks that have major payoffs, like starting a creative project or putting ourselves out there, making an investment, getting married, getting divorced, starting a healing journey, or adding variety to your sex life. All this great stuff in life actually requires us to override our negativity bias, because if we're going to look at the negative, we're always going to find reasons we shouldn't put ourselves out there, do the project, get married, get divorced, start the healing journey, have hot sex, be wild and free. We will be so sensitive to the reasons not to do these things, to the negative risks, that we will never actually experience all the joy, pleasure, bliss, and fulfillment, truly, from taking this positive risk. The deal is, if you're out here taking risks, feeling good, wearing what you want to wear, doing what you want to do, living your dream, a lot of people in our lives just aren't there yet, or they're going through a bummer of a time for one reason or another. They're kind of just stuck in a rut. I don't know about you, but I'm not naturally positive. It's become a discipline to not gossip or criticize, to live and let live, to come from a place of love and receptivity instead of fear, to be open-minded and ask questions instead of making assumptions about people. So when someone is being negative around you, it's kind of like being around cigarette smoke after you've stopped smoking. You're taking in all this secondhand smoke and it just feels kind of yucky. Maybe you relate to this part as well. I've worked really hard to let go of what others think and all the rules so that I can do life the way that I want and take the risks that will make my dreams come true, which means I've had to tune out a lot of negativity and be really choosy about who I share things with. So when I do share something that I'm dreaming of or a goal I've just accomplished and that gets minimized in some way, I'm still human. It feels like getting knocked down a few stairs when that happens. And if I'm creating something, especially if it's in that vulnerable early phase, whether it's an outfit or performance or whatever it is, and that gets undermined by someone I care about, oh, it can feel like an attack. I've also learned over the years that I treat my brain as a sacred space. I've developed habits to alleviate my anxiety and depression that include being very mindful of the inputs. What kind of noise and information gets to enter my brain, and when it gets to enter my brain. What I mean is I pray and meditate before I watch the news. I'm not like a wake up and watch the world fall apart kind of girl, because my little heart can't handle it. I'm going to have anxiety for the rest of the day. I'm really mindful of what gets into this personal operating system of mine and its effects on me. So hearing a bunch of negativity can feel a little bit like an invasion. It can feel intrusive unless I know how to deal with it. And that is what I want to talk to you about today. So yeah, being around negativity can feel like being dragged down. It can feel like being knocked down a few stairs. It can feel like being around cigarette smoke when you quit smoking. But there is a way through, and I'm going to guide you through it right now. So the first thing you want to do, if you're around somebody who's being negative in any way, any of those ways that I just mentioned, is stop making them wrong. Stop making them wrong for how they're being in the moment. I saw a great cartoon by the artist Swan Huntley the other day, and one person says, "What are you doing?" One person says, "What are you doing?" And the other person says, "Judging you for being judgmental," which I'm like, okay, point taken. So you want to allow them to be exactly how they are and who they are. So allow. The next piece is to recognize they're not the only person who can be in a bad mood. Like, I've definitely been through a negative month or a negative year or like a really hard year. I've been that person before. And usually we're going to be more sensitive to someone else's behavior if we have had that same behavior in the past and just haven't forgiven ourselves yet. So if we're still judging ourselves for who we were then, and that's kind of like the cigarette smoke analogy. Like, cigarette smoke is like kind of gross if you have never smoked, but if you used to smoke, it's like, oh my God. And it's also like a little tempting too. So there's part of, like, I used to smoke, so this one hits hard for me. When I smell cigarette smoke, I'm equally like, ugh, and I also feel a little bit like, So, if you relate to that, that's why it's like you're battling that part of yourself that still wants it, that could still fall down that little spiral. So stop making them wrong because they're doing something that likely you've done before and have overcome. And then, listen, I know how annoying it is when someone is spewing their negativity, but there can also be a benefit to seeing risks. And people who are practicing toxic positivity kind of miss those things sometimes. So the shadow side of being positive is we use being positive to avoid taking preventative actions. We can be a little checked out about the risks in a situation or not prepare for them as well. And we can be a little bit tuned out to the needs of the world. So stop making them wrong. Allow them to be exactly who they are. The second part is to stop resisting their negativity and to be open to your lesson. If someone's negative around you and you go, oh, like you feel like you've been knocked down, you feel like you're overwhelmed by it, or you have a really strong emotional reaction, there's a trigger there. Most likely that trigger did not begin with them unless they are your parents. It likely began sometime before age 8 in your life. And we have a possibility for growth here. If I'm in a really good place and someone's negative around me, my next thought is, oh, I have a trigger here. And once I heal this trigger, I know that they're probably either going to stop being negative in this way, it won't bother me anymore, or they're just going to disappear from my life. Those are the 3 things that happen when I heal a trigger. When we're open to the lesson and we've stopped resisting it, now we're curious, right? Like, what is actually going on here? Because we know it's not about this person. We know that it's probably something to do with the past. And if we have a past experience with this emotion that this person is dredging up for us, sometimes we subconsciously fulfill this experience again and again. So we set people up to do the thing that's going to trigger us to have the emotion. This creates predictability, which one part of our brain really likes because we can always predict that this is the outcome, this is what's going to happen. So almost always, if we have a subconscious expectation that at a certain point in a relationship or a job, things fall apart, we will try to recreate the situation over and over again. So the ego gets to prove itself right. And we get to fulfill that emotional addiction. So our job is to just become aware, like, what's the pattern here? If I know it's not this person, if this person is just a mirror, if this person is just triggering something that was already in me, then what do I have to learn here? What is the lesson? Another way this can show up is if we're taking a risk in our lives, like a creative risk, and we have inner doubt about the risk, what we sometimes do is we'll set others up to express that same doubt to us. So they will mirror back our doubt so we can then spiral out about the doubt instead of just focusing on moving forward with the risk no matter what. So, the subconscious is a funny thing, but we can get ahead of it by bringing our awareness to it and taking, as I've mentioned a million times before, 100% responsibility. That's the thing. I'm no longer resisting their negativity, their behavior, and being open to the lesson. The lesson is yours to learn, not the other person's. The next step is to find the root of your resistance. Like I said before, if we're being triggered or having a strong emotional response, something from an earlier time in our life is being dredged up. Probably happened before age 8. So you're not just responding to the negativity that's happening in the moment. Your inner child is also reacting there. So if you had, for example, negative and critical parents who were naysaying your ideas, putting you down, undermining your accomplishments, squashing your dreams, or if your home was just an unpleasant place to be, you might be extra sensitive to negativity, especially if you've worked really hard to stop being negative yourself. So being reactive to negativity is a sign that we are still wounded and need to heal. So maybe you'll be able to remember something in your life or be like, oh, okay, I'm very sensitive to this because of the way that I grew up. I'm very sensitive. Here's the quickest way to get to the root. Ask this question: what is my fear? It could be fear of being myself around this person because they're going to judge me, they're going to go into negativity. Fear of speaking freely, fear of sharing my dreams, fear of being put down, fear of being judged, fear this person won't change and I'll either have to deal with them or make a decision. Then you want to look at what's the truth. The truth is their opinion of me is none of my business. The truth is I may have a childhood emotional trigger that's making me overly sensitive to this. Like they're just making a joke and I am taking it to an extreme, or I'm having like a total emotional meltdown and they're just cracking a joke that's actually funny, or they're always honest, whether they love something or they don't like something that I'm creating or wearing or saying or an idea. They're always very honest with me, and I just don't like it when they're honest in a way that is not positive. So what's the truth? The truth is also they're allowed to be exactly as they are. We're not going to make them wrong anymore. So like there's nothing wrong with the way that they're being. Seeing them with total love and respect. They're being how they are. And this might just be a phase that they're in. They might just be in a particularly fearful stage in life, or maybe there's an instability in one area, so they need control in another area. And they're just putting that a little bit on you with the negativity. But it's not personal at all. So they might just be coming from a place of fear. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's got nothing to do with you. No matter what's happening, what they're doing has nothing to do with you. And your reaction has nothing to do with them. And when you really get that on a deep level, it's so much easier to just go back to your side of the street, to stop, oh, I need for them to be different. I need for them to start being positive. Let me show them and teach them how to be positive, that's not going to get you where you want to go, because you want to be able to walk free through this world without needing everyone to have kid gloves. Letting them be exactly who they are without any kind of need for them to change is going to be really important, and recognizing that it's not personal for them or for you puts you on your side of the street. It's just your side of the street that you're responsible for. Another piece of truth might be that you could be setting them up. So like I said earlier, if we have those subconscious fears or beliefs that things always go this way at a certain point, we might be setting them up by saying certain things to them, or presenting things to them in a certain way that leaves us open to be judged or to receive feedback that we weren't asking for. Maybe we're not coming to them with confidence, and so they're reading our own doubt and saying, oh no, right? And if they don't have a strong level of awareness, they're feeling it and they're expressing your inner doubt to you. So really recognizing, am I setting them up to be negative around me? Or maybe I've gossiped with them before. I suddenly decide I don't want to gossip anymore. Then they start gossiping around me and I'm like, oh, why are you gossiping around me? Because for 15 years, it's been totally cool. If you suddenly decided to stop gossiping, you might need to communicate that with them. So you get to what's the truth, and we get to take responsibility and depersonalize it. And then we can do a meditation. And this meditation, it's been one of the most effective meditations I have ever done. What you do is that you simply picture this person at a distance from you, because we want to start to release some of that enmeshment or feeling that you are responsible for their emotions, or that their emotions are your emotions, all those things that can happen in childhood, especially if we have a parent who made us responsible for their happiness, or who made it seem very important that we make them proud, or that we be a certain way. We really want to start to undo that enmeshment by picturing this person at a distance, across a room from us. Just send them love from your heart. You can picture it like a white light or yellow light. Just send them love. Then you can picture them doing whatever it is that they do. They're being negative. They're saying the thing, shutting down your idea, shutting down your dream, undermining or minimizing your accomplishments. Whatever it is that feels negative, they're doing that thing. And then you bring in the truth. So as you picture them in that energy, you also bring in, it's not personal. This is their fear. It's not my fear. It's their fear. It's all the way across the room. It's not in my body. It's in their body. I don't have to take that on. Oh, that's their opinion. It doesn't have to be my opinion. Their opinion is not my command. I can still do whatever I choose to do. They can still have that opinion. That's completely okay. I might have to say it a few times for it to sink in, especially if they're very fearful, or if their tendency when they're in fear is to turn into a little bit of a dictator. Then you might have to say it a few times, but you just let it go and let them be them across the room, and send them love. And hold a space as you allow them to be exactly as they are, and totally without judgment, and just like, okay, that's just the mood that they're in or the place they're in. Know that this probably isn't how they are all the time. If they are like this all the time, then also bring humor to it. If like this is their personality, that's kind of fucking hilarious. So, okay, they're a little bit curmudgeonly, whatever, like, laugh about it. This is funny. Start to bring in the truth, the light, the humor. If it's just a phase that someone's going through, deep breath. As you're doing this meditation, practice regulating your breathing. That's another really important piece of the meditation. My tendency is when I'm in fear, my breathing gets dysregulated. So what I do when I'm in this meditation is I continue to breathe all the way into my belly and release. And as I practice this regulated breathing all the way into my belly, not shrinking my body, having that little string that pulls from the top of my head to the clouds, keeping my posture straight, strong, and continuing to regulate my breathing as we picture them across the room with their opinions, their judgments, their fears, them doing whatever they do when they're in their negativity, and just letting them be that way holding my place, my truth, and continuing to breathe. If you do this long enough, you're rehearsing for when you're in that moment with them and they do it again. And rather than either collapsing and just going along with it or reacting and fighting back, you're just going to stay strong and loving. You're going to be able to stay in your heart and let them be them. Over time, if you continue to neutralize your emotional reaction to this by using that meditation and that rehearsal, you're not going to really be bothered by it. You might decide, okay, honey, okay, mom, okay, dad, I'm going to go on a walk or whoever it is. Or, oh, I got to pull something out of the oven. Talk to you soon. You're not going to get so wrapped up in it. You're just going to lovingly excuse yourself the same way that you would hope they would do if you were being negative on them. We're all in this together. Nobody is above anybody else on this journey. And I think that we can kind of get into this place of well, I'm doing the work, so therefore they just need to do the work and get a therapist and all this. But truly, other people do not have free will around you. They are behaving exactly the way that you have created a space for them to behave. They are showing up in the energy that you have created, and you can bring out the best in people if you're vibrationally strong enough. It's totally up to you. And you do have the power to neutralize things so that they either no longer bother you or they just don't really happen around you. I'd really recommend the work, if this is interesting to you, I would recommend the work of Emmett Fox. There's a book called The Sermon on the Mount, and it talks about the metaphysical elements of the Sermon on the Mount. So read that book. Check it out. You're going to learn more about not really engaging with it. You're training your emotions so that you're neutral around it. Then this won't be such a big deal. There are, of course, certain reasons why this would matter a little bit more. For example, if this person is bringing this energy around a child, they don't get to be around that energy. But if it's just around you, you're an adult and you have the capacity to shift it. The next thing you can do after you do that meditation is protect your energy. What we do, especially for somebody's being really negative, is we get a little bit afraid they're going to pollute our brain or kill our spirit, So bring in the woo. Do a golden light meditation to protect yourself. And what that is you just imagine yourself being encased and encompassed in a golden light. You can also picture clearing your aura. The aura is kind of like your personal space. Close your eyes and picture your aura being cleared out. When I first started hearing about this stuff 15 years ago, I remember people would tell me, picture a golden light, clear out your aura, these kinds of things. I was like, you sound like a fucking nut job. But there is something to it. Even though I'm a spiritual person, I'm a very practical spiritual person. So my tendency is less crystals type of spirituality and more practical, taking responsibility, truth-telling kind of spirituality. You wake up, you focus on your breath and meditation to train your brain, and then you find all the ways that you're not telling the truth, and you go and tell the truth, and you just do the work. That's the spirituality I come from. So it's less of the golden light crystal and auras kind of spirituality, but this works. I don't know what to tell you. So give it a shot if you enjoy or if it speaks to you, and see what happens. When I do the work of it, and it's always about, are you actually doing it or are you just talking about doing it? When I actually sat down and did the meditation, it did something. I don't know what it did. I can't explain it. But when I picture a golden light surrounding and encasing and encompassing my body, and then I picture clearing out my aura, my personal space, that little glow around me, maybe it's pink. For some reason, after I do that, I feel really good. So, if it speaks to you, try it out. And if it doesn't speak to you, just ignore it. The next thing you can do is take some space from this person. It doesn't have to be a lot of space, but it can just be to go outside for a little bit or go do your own thing for the rest of the night or call them back later. If they're in a mood, just let them be there and let them be exactly how they are. Most of the time, if somebody is acting in a way, there's usually fear behind it. So if they're in a mood, just let them be there and then come back later. If it's a coworker, just, cool, I'm going to go take a lunch. I'll see you later. Or my boss is going through a hard time right now. I'm going to go back to work and know that it's not personal. Just take some space from them as you can. And then the last resort, and I genuinely believe this should be the last resort because it tends to be people's first resort. The last resort should be sharing something with them. So bringing something to someone's attention in hopes that they might change. The first resort is to address our side of the street. If you do feel, if you've done all these things, they're still doing it, and it just doesn't seem tenable for them to continue to do this and for you to be able to be around them, however the negative state is, you can come to them. And it should be in the forms of taking responsibility in some way. So, for example, saying, I've been making it mean XYZ when this happens. I've made up a story about this, that such and such, when the truth is something else. I've been setting you up, whatever you want to take responsibility for. But it won't work if you come to them in anger or judgment, because it's just going to be a trigger back and forth, and you guys are going to be like caught in the emotional addiction. And the emotional addiction of the back and forth trigger can happen with anybody. It can happen with a sales clerk. It can happen with your kid. It can happen with your partner, your coworker, or your boss. There's no like, oh, this only happens with my parents or this only happens with my partners. It can happen with anybody. So we really want to take responsibility so that we're coming to them with a clear heart. What's that? Full hearts, clear eyes, can't lose. That's what you want to come to them with. Full heart and clear eyes. When you come to them in this way, you're going to get a much better response, no matter what it is. They might not be able to shift out of this, and you will have to be ready for that too. But if you have tried everything else and you think it's important to bring it to their attention after all the other steps, then I really think you should, because it's only fair to give people a chance. So if you want to see what's possible, here's what you would do. You would say, like, do you see a way that I could share with you what I want to do without you putting it down? Or do you see a way forward where I could bring up so-and-so and we just wouldn't say anything negative about them? Do you see a way forward where I could share an accomplishment and you could acknowledge that without bringing up the next step or something I haven't done yet? And sometimes people just aren't aware of how they're coming across. Like, they've just been this way for ages and you're mentioning it to them and they're like, oh my goodness. And sometimes they really don't know how to stop. And so you're just going to share this with them and try to have an open conversation where you genuinely have curiosity. The truth is that you don't actually know why they're being the way they're being. They actually could have a really kind intention in this. And I know we talked about kind intentions last week, and it's so surprising sometimes where somebody's coming from. Like, we think that they're doing one thing, and even though the way they're going about it might not be working for us, their intentions might be really good. So try to have an open conversation about it. Bring your authenticity, bring your truth, and you're going to potentially be able to work through it in a new way. To summarize, first of all, stop making them wrong for how they're being or what they're doing.